Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace.
Who's your new friend, Eric?
Shut up, Mom. Not now. Help! Don't touch him, he's ginger!
You have pretty good control over your farts. Nothing out of the ordinary has happened.
Nagasaki! Armies of Justice! Ready! Prepare! And... let's beat up Clad!
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to a risky one. South Park Stick of Truth. We're talking about this one because South Park Snow Day is out right now, and it got me thinking about the South Park video games. In particular, my favorite of them all is South Park Stick of Truth. This one hails from one of my favorite ever game developers in Obsidian Entertainment, responsible for the likes of KOTOR 2 Remake, which is a top 2 game of all time for me, only usurped by KOTOR 1 from BioWare, hint hint nudge nudge, and then you also have Fallout New Vegas. So beautiful, talented hands crafted this masterpiece of an RPG, but South Park Stick of Truth does the riskiest thing I think a game can do and base all of its story around comedy. That's because comedy can become dated, hearing the same jokes over and over as you replay games becomes less and less funny. So I often equate narrative comedy to like a really cheap stock on the market and kind of thinking like, I don't know if that's going to turn into anything, but nonetheless, South Park Stick of Truth, fond memories of reviewing this one. This was back when Ubisoft and other publishers used to actually mail copies of the game into you. So the copy behind me for South Park Stick of Truth, that's the one that Ubisoft has sent to me, which is crazy to think about because now it's just like an email, here's a code. I kind of miss the way things were done back then, but nonetheless, I remember this one fondly because I was constantly aghast at all the places and things that this game would go to and do, but I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. It's South Park after all. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special Retro Rebound. If you're new here and you're into nostalgic or retrospective content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. The following video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace, I've told you about them a couple of times here on the channel for the last few months. They are the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. So whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to build a beautiful website. I've talked about it a bit before in my game development journey, but one of the requirements is to have your own website. And I kid you not, I've been using Squarespace to set that one up so we can start actually pitching something professional looking to potential investors in our game. So whether you're doing something like that with game development or you're working on your own business, say something like custom merch, which you can easily sell through Squarespace and create a passive income, or you're looking to show off your catalog of videos, you can do all this through the Fluid engine, which powers Squarespace with its best-in-class website templates, easy to use, easy to customize, and there's analytics you can use to grow your business, which is something key for what I do. So whether it's an online store or something that you're trying to professionally present, Squarespace has you covered. So what are you waiting for? Head to squarespace.com/retrorebound and save 10% off on your first website or domain. Let's start off at the top with setting the tone for South Park, because you're probably going to see something in this video that it's in the gameplay, it's probably offensive. South Park does not have a target everyone gets made fun of. I know that pretty well because South Park ruined me in middle school. And this is, I guess, a bit of a personal story, but I don't care anymore, so like, whatever. But I remember in 7th grade, I was sitting there at lunch and I was eating by myself because I didn't know where my friends were at. I don't think I shared a lunch period with them. And so, unfortunately, I was chosen by the popular kids in school to, you know, gather around me. And I remember while I was sitting there, they started calling me Ginger. And they kept calling me it. Now, I don't really have the luscious ginger locks as much anymore as the years have gone on. The auburn has faded a little bit, but it's there on some days. If you watch enough of my content, you'll just see some days it decides to be bright and colorful. But yeah, I used to have way more freckles and everything. And I distinctly remember these people bullying me. They kept calling me Ginger over and over. I remember going home, crying my eyes out. I was supposed to have friends over that night. Like, it completely wrecked me. I was so upset. And yeah, I actually never really watched much of South Park growing up because of that. I kind of resented the show, and I eventually just learned to laugh at it and laugh at myself and not be such a hard ass, but that was a heartbreaking moment for me. So going into South Park Stick of Truth was like one of my first true exposures to South Park and the beauty that is making fun of everything and everyone and getting absolutely grotesque with everything in this world. So yeah, this game goes above and beyond. in so many departments. Many, unfortunately, I can't show you. Like, there's one part where as the new kid, your parents are doing it in the background of one of the fighting stages. Like, I can't show you, but it's wild, and they just go everywhere with this game. So if you've not played South Park Stick of Truth, number one, game is always on sale, so pretty easy pickup. But number two, I almost would say don't even bother watching this video. Just go in blind, and you will be stunned at where this game goes. So, for the general premise, South Park Stick of Truth, you play as the new kid, aka Douchebag. That's your nickname. You've been called Douchebag this whole time. And you're basically joining a large LARP. Everyone is doing a big live action role-playing experience, and we're all looking for the Stick of Truth. This provides a source of power that would put you above everyone else. So everyone's fighting for, yes, really, a stick. And in natural South Park fashion, it gets continuously more ridiculous. I'm talking about, oh, there's a new Taco Bell in town. Like, you'll find a sign that says, like, coming summer 2014. And it's amazing to think that, oh my God, it's actually been that long. And I remember reviewing this in my first year of college. Time flies. But nonetheless, you see like that little stamp, and then it leads you into what is a hidden military base. The only way you can get in is by taking one of your farts and like shooting it into the distance and controlling where it lands and distracting the army, and you can sneak in afterwards. Like, the game is so insane. Again, I don't think anyone should be surprised, but it's so unapologetically hilarious. I remember watching other reviews when it came out, and a lot of people felt like, I don't know if the humor is going to age well, a lot of time jokes. I feel like with the way humor is treated nowadays online, and there's this increased sensitivity, I feel like time has been rather kind to South Park Stick of Truth, and just its pure ridiculousness and its lack of fear to do and say anything it absolutely wants. Like, the ridiculous class names, the way that they represent difficulty in the game, they just go everywhere and do everything. And it is offensive humor, no doubt about it, but that is, I think, what makes South Park Stick of Truth this very different, bold video game, because it just has no fear as it trots into any direction it wants. One thing that I would recommend watching is Tim Kaine is a developer that I think more people need to pay attention to. He is now semi-retired, but he worked at Obsidian Entertainment for a very long stretch of time, and he did work on South Park Stick of Truth, mostly in the programmatic field and a little bit of design, but he talked about his experience working on the game, and he talked about how working with Matt and Trey Parker was a little tough, and how they had complete levels done, debugged, optimized, like ready to go, and they would outright slash content because they didn't think it was funny anymore. So it's crazy to think that South Park Stick of Truth had so much more to it, but then again, it may have been for the better. Tim Kaine said in his video it was kind of upsetting because he wanted more people to see that stuff. But for me as a consumer, not knowing any better, not knowing what I missed, South Park Stick of Truth is a rare RPG that falls under like the 15-hour mark. Like, you can really fly through this game. Especially, it's appreciated when it looks and runs like a TV show. And I think if it had an extreme runtime, that may have gotten a bit out of pocket. Granted, there's Fractured Butthole, which pushes past the 20-hour mark and does have a different combat system, admittedly, so it's a little more action-oriented, a little more gripping to some. For me, I prefer the turn-based approach that South Park Stick of Truth has. But maybe with that in mind, it's best that it functioned like a very long episode of the TV show, or as some would say, it's like a season of the TV show. And that's one thing we really haven't gotten into yet. I think one of the most impressive parts of South Park Stick of Truth is that it literally looks like the show. Like, obviously that's what you'd come to expect, but there's no compromise in how the characters move, how they talk, how the camera moves in when they talk. The ridiculousness is naturally captured, but there is literally no compromises in making this feel like South Park. And that is another aspect of the game that makes it so special. Like, it's just a long episode of the show. Now, while I'm not like a longtime viewer of the show, in fact, I've watched still very little South Park, but one thing that I can appreciate about it is something I've appreciated about many games in the past that involve licenses and tie-ins, is when you are a fan of something and then a game gives you an opportunity to explore that world. I think very few do it better in South Park. You can go into every house, every bedroom, every storefront, talk with everyone. There's a trophy or achievement to adding everyone to your friend list. Like, you can add the president to your friends list. You can add Jesus to your friends list. Like, this game is just, it's such a riot. I also love when video games get creative, I guess would be the best word, with how they handle magic in games. Like, I think oftentimes, and it's fair if it makes sense, but oftentimes we default to like MP, mana points. Like every game, every world has mana because we're familiar with that, but it doesn't make sense in world. And so you have to think like, okay, these are a bunch of kids playing make-believe. Like you can't conjure a fireball and just throw it at an enemy, right? Okay, so what if we made the magic farting? And that's where I like the almost Metroidvania aspect of the game. Like, yes, there's a turn-based aspect we're gonna get into, but there is like throwing your farts and you'll hit an object and be able to explore an area that you previously couldn't. Like there are collectibles littered throughout all of South Park that you can go out and explore. The worst is when you go into the forest, I think when you're heading towards Canada, and you just get lost. I remember when I was reviewing the game, I spent an absurd amount of time in there just trying to figure out where I was. But I just like how they also handle the magic system in this game, and that every character has their own little quirk when you're playing as them. Like, for example, the timing of tapping during certain attacks. Same with defense. Again, I like the more turn-based nature of Stick of Truth. It just fits my sensibilities more. I wouldn't say it's better than what, say, South Park: The Fractured Butthole did. And that game is also stunning in its own right because Ubisoft has been known to just go very soft with their storytelling and be very much apologists for anything they do, right or wrong. And I was very surprised just all the areas that game would go to. This game was published by Ubisoft, but originally was to be published by THQ before they went bankrupt. And this game almost didn't make it out the door because of its very complicated development cycle. You had multiple parts of the game shut down, a lot of indecisiveness because you had showrunners who were familiar with how things ran there with like storyboarding, now making decisions on games that took years to make. Like you didn't spend a week making an episode, you spent, you know, multiple years. And then you have your main publisher going bankrupt. Ubisoft picks it up and actually gave this game life. It also got delayed a number of times, and people were starting to have trouble believing this game would ever release. Fortunately, it did after a ton of delays, and many people thought when it was going to come out, it wasn't going to be very good. It's just crazy that it turned out as well as it did. But yeah, it's a game that's rooted in exploration, crazy magic, wicked humor that just is unafraid to make anyone feel bad about themselves, and it ultimately turns out to be a special game that I think has kind of aged well, not only gameplay-wise, but just in its wild, fearless humor. It's a really great time, and it was nice to go back to it. And while South Park Snow Day isn't bad, it definitely left me like, man, I wish they just made another Stick of Truth. But I even felt that way with Fractured Butthole. Like, I enjoyed it. It was a really good time. Maybe a little too long. I didn't think it needed to be as long as it was, but it was still a great time. But it wasn't the same as Stick of Truth. And I mean, Stick of Truth was made when a lot of the top Obsidian talent that was there making the likes of New Vegas was still hanging around. So like they just had a supreme level of talent that's hard to match, particularly in the writing department. But nonetheless, this game is a blast. Go ahead and pick it up if you haven't, because again, with all the collectibles, the exploration, the crazy humor, the dialogue and interactions are just too funny. The levels, like the final, I won't spoil it, but the final level in this game, like where you gotta go is just, oh, I'm scarred. Why? And there's a boss fight in Fractured Butthole. I'll just say Subway. It's just too good, man. It's just too funny. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I leave it in your hands. What do you think of South Park Stick of Truth? I am absolutely looking forward to getting your thoughts down below. No complete box experience for this one because here you go. You ready? Ready for your complete box experience? Boom. Nothing at all. So disappointing. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you with that. Take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.